This is Unacceptable News. Joe Russell now with the front line with Joe and Joe. Once again, let us go into the breach. This used to be the dream in G7 nations, i.e. Canada and America. Work hard, buy a home, raise a family. No more. Play the clip.
We had a deal in this country for a long time, didn't we? You remember that? Feels like a long time ago. Wasn't that long ago? It was a deal that you work hard, you follow the laws, you get a good house in a good, safe neighborhood. You make a good living for your family and you have a great life. But that deal, like many other things under the Trudeau government, is now broken. We have 35-year-olds like me, people I could have went to high school with, living in their parents' basements because the cost of housing, of mortgage payments, rent payments, down payments has literally doubled under Trudeau's watch. It now takes around 25 years to save for a down payment on a house in Toronto. And I'm not too young to remember there was a time where in 25 years you could be expected to pay off your mortgage. That's not the case in Canada anymore. And all the Liberals have to offer when we ask them, how are we going to fix this, are excuses and promises that they're going to think about it. Imagine that, Liberals thinking. I mean, how much confidence can we have in that, right? But they are not coming up with concrete actions. And they're failing not just young people, they're also failing seniors. When I knock on doors in Clarington, in Oshawa, in Scugog, I meet many seniors, many of whom cannot afford to live in the house they've been in for years. They're struggling in this crisis as well, some of them even being evicted from their homes because of the neglect of our government. The time for excuses and empty Liberal promises is over. It's time for conservative solutions. Yes, yes. No better kind of solution, is there? No better kind.
Socialism does not work for regular people. Don't believe the rhetoric. I'm talking about radical socialism. Of course, you need some social nets, i.e. Social Security. You need to help people, old people, particularly with Medicare. There has to be some form of subsidized health care for people. I get it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about radical leftist socialism. It destroys the average person. It throws you a crumb. It puts you on the dole. It puts you on the plantation. It's leading you to a universal income, and then you will be a slave. It's time to build back better, Canada. Play the clip.
An unprecedented opportunity. This is our chance
to really build back better.
This is our moment to change the future for the better. We can't afford to miss it because this window of opportunity won't be open for long.
We have a golden opportunity. We have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves.
So let's use this window of opportunity and let's recreate a global framework which really is in line with the requirements of a society in the 21st century.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset.
The Great Reset.
It's now a historical moment, a crucial moment to rebuild the future.
It is imperative that we reimagine, rebuild, redesign, reinvigorate, and rebalance our world.
Building back better.
Hopefully we can just work on what we say, building back better.
Building back better out of COVID, there's huge opportunities for us.
Build back better. I like to say build back better.
We must first pass the budget resolution so that we can then pass the president's Build Back Better agenda.
My Build Back Better agenda?
We must build back better.
We're going to build it back better.
Build it back better.
Building back better.
Build back better.
Build back.
Build for the future. How about we eat now? How about we look at the refrigerator? They're destroying you. They have a vision, and it's not about you. You are not in the equation. It's been 8 years, Canada, and yet still people block that reality out. It's a sickness. Jordan Peterson calls out the climate alarmists in Canada. Play the clip.
Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, 2 weeks ago had the unmitigated and I would say quasi-demonic gall to announce publicly that $8 a gallon gasoline in Canada was actually probably a good thing because Canadians should be reminded nonstop just how severe the climate crisis is every time they fill up their cars. And that's perfectly bloody fine unless you're living on the edge of your economic capability. And the fact that you can't afford to fill up your car anymore puts you into unemployment and food deprivation in relationship to your children. And that's in the rich West. And so when you hear these bloody globalist utopians talk about the necessity for higher energy costs, you remember that comes directly at the cost of the world's poor.
I've said it once, I'll say it again. Climate energy policies do not help average people. They simply don't. But people rationalize it. People continue to enable those who are destroying them financially. Most people can't afford to support this type of government because it's crushing them financially. They listen to the rhetoric, and the politicians know that. They're playing you. They know you belong to a political tribe, and they're playing you. It's time for people to open their eyes. But many times in my clips, people say, well, what's the solution? I'm going to give it to you. You need strong families. You need people who don't identify with a political party. They identify with their family and God. And when you have people like that, they see clearer, and you build a society from the ground up. Then you will have better leaders serving people, frankly, that don't embrace vice, they embrace virtue. And that's when your society gets better. And that's why you're not going to vote yourself out of this. You have to get out of the mud, building the country up from the ground. When you do that, your nation will improve. Until then, it sadly won't. Record high mortgage rates are a welcome relief for Canada? I don't think so. Play the clip.
The Bank of Canada's decision to maintain its overnight interest rate is welcome relief for Canadians.
We've now seen, 10 hikes, some of them by a full percentage point each. This is, Ian, the fastest, most aggressive cycle of interest rate hikes this country's ever seen.
Canadian households owe more in debt than the value of Canada's entire economy, with nearly 3/4 of that debt tied to mortgages.
Mortgage interest costs were the biggest contributor to inflation, soaring by more than 30% over the past year.
Canada-wide, half of those with a variable rate mortgage say they've had to take out money from their savings to pay their monthly bills.
The Bank of Canada's decision to maintain its overnight interest rate is welcome relief for Canadians.
Ultimately, the only people who could afford homes when you have radical socialists running a government are the wealthy and those who are in charge. Get that through your head. They are throwing you a crumb and they eat the rest of the cake. By the way, I think they're throwing the cake at you too, and it's hitting you right in the face. What's worse, Canada? The carbon tax or the climate crisis? You decide. Play the clip.
Let's not forget, this is hammering Canadians where they work, where they live, and where they raise their families. And so, there's no policy better that shows how out of touch with Canadians this Liberal government really is than this hated Trudeau carbon tax. This tax is particularly punitive, as we know, in rural parts of the country. In Atlantic Canada, where I'm from, people have no choice but to drive their vehicles to work in factories, in fields, in places of work. They have no choice. They don't have public transit. They don't have alternative energy sources in many cases in rural parts of the country. So it is, again, a divisive and punishing policy that has been imposed on the country. The carbon tax increases the cost of everything, but particularly on the horizon in a cold Canadian winter is the cost of home heating fuel, of propane, of natural gas. Now, I, for one, coming from Atlantic Canada, sure wish we had an Energy East pipeline right now, bringing good Canadian, safe, ethical oil to Atlantic Canada to export to the world.
Ultimately, green energy policies destroy people who live in rural communities. They destroy the working class, the middle class, and the average person. Period. End of story. Turn off the rhetoric. Turn off the mainstream media. By all means, recycle. But ultimately, electric-driven cars at this point in time do not serve regular people. Get it through your head. Stop listening to the rhetoric and watch Joe and Joe. The battle between Danielle Smith and the czar of the environment, Guilbeault, continues. Listen to this gibberish. Play the clip.
Canada's carbon emissions are less than 2% of the world's. If every Canadian were to give up their cars and shut their electricity off, it would make no difference compared to what China and other big powerhouses are. So why are you content putting Canadians into energy poverty when it doesn't even solve a global problem?
If you look at what's happening in Canada, Canada is a success story when looking at investment in clean technologies. In fact, Alberta.
Then why do you need more taxes?
Is a Canadian success story when looking at investment in clean technologies and renewable energy. 70% of the investments we've seen in the last year in renewable energy has been in Alberta. I find it baffling that the Premier would put a stop to $30 billion worth of clean technology investment in her province. Canada is an energy powerhouse, and if I can go to China, if I can go to India and say we all have to work together to fight climate change because we're all in this together, it's because we're doing our homework here. We're doing what we need to do to tackle climate change and climate pollution.
When you look at, listen to this gibberish. He can't even spit out a statement because it's all lies and it's all about ideology. He could care less about you. Please open your eyes.
Securing your data privacy is more important than ever. Start your free privacy scan and see how much of your data is being sold on the internet. Offering data breach monitoring, bulk data removal, and agency protection, DataSeal.io is the best and most affordable way to secure your data from ending up in the wrong hands. Remove your data today from the internet with DataSeal.io. That's DataSeal.io.